And so we've started, okay, we're recording now and we're live. So hi, everybody. Well, welcome to this discussion, and we're just going to start directly. So Anurag, Anurag was just asking me, what are we looking at? What are the aims? So quickly, the aim is one, to dispel the doubts against alternative medicine, specifically Ayurveda in our case, through the International Ayurveda Alliance, on how we can go global and how we can achieve, you can breach the $20 billion mark in exports. So today, as far as we are concerned and what we know, I think 540 odd million dollars is the export component of Ayurveda from the country. And we have very strong reason to believe that in less than 5 years, we can reach the $20 billion mark. The demand is extremely high in the post-corona wellness and immunity market is really, I don't know if the word is grown, but I think the market is extremely aware and ready. So that's one part. And second, any kind of alternate medicine globally, there are a lot of doubts about, the efficacy of that medicine itself. So there are two parts to Ayurveda. One, it is a way of life. It is a way of wellness. And, the immunity, it creates a lot of immunity in the human body. And of course, there's this medical cure part. So we are not going to be looking at the cure part too much today, say maybe 30% of the entire discussion, for the very simple reason that as soon as it becomes a medicine and a cure, you need permissions and compliances from every government and every country that you want to enter. So it's not like a product patent that you've applied and you can just go out and start selling. It's not like that. So that is a practical problem. Okay, I think we have Khushboo also. Khushboo Jain is here. So we've just started, Khushboo, and welcome in. So I'm going to Arjun. Arjun, I think a lot of people would look at you and want to do what you've already done. You've gone ahead very aggressively, retailed Ayurveda products, had a fantastic retail channel, and then exited at a valuation that people, a lot of these youngsters today, a lot of startups, and even a lot of well-entrenched companies would give an arm and a leg. So how do you look at this entire piece vis-a-vis your experience in Ayurveda, retailing in India, and taking India abroad, taking Ayurveda abroad, global, please?
Look, Deepak, I'll start by stepping back a little bit before Dr. Vaidya into why I actually started the business, right? So my family's been Ayurveda for 150 years. My last name means Ayurvedic doctor. I come from a legacy of 150 years of Ayurveda in my family. My grandfather cured me of asthma using Ayurvedic formulations. And so I had a personal belief in the science more than just being family legacy. I went to the US for my undergrad in the year 2009, and I saw a move towards natural organic products. But I also saw yoga being repackaged in the US, right? Yoga mats, yoga gyms, yoga apparel, Lululemon, multi-billion-dollar industry in the US. And I started to think to myself, if they have taken yoga, which is what is traditionally Indian, and repackaged and rebranded to appeal to modern consumers, and India had nothing to do with it, that's not right. And so I remember calling my grandfather from campus and telling him, look, I really like the fact that Ayurveda can be global, but I believe that Indian companies need to take Ayurveda to the world. So the premise behind Dr. Vaidya's was take an ancient science of Ayurveda, take 150 years of family legacy, and repackage and rebrand to appeal to modern consumers. That's the thought process behind which we started. I think we're still in the early days of Ayurveda going global. And so I still believe there is a really large opportunity for us with Ayurveda where we can be Indians taking it to the world. What I do think we need to learn from the playbook of yoga is it needs to be repackaged, rebranded, or presented in a format that appeals to modern consumers, that appeals to 21st century consumers. Right? So I feel like our biggest win at Dr. Vaidya's was creating a product called Chakash, which is the goodness of Chyawanprash in a toffee form. We realized that Chyawanprash is really good for kids, but it's black, bitter, sticky, and inconvenient. And so how do we repackage in a form that appeals to modern consumers? And I think a lot of the use of digital, the use of teleconsultations, the use of the internet, the use of new age formulations, new packaging, new ways of communication. All of this can actually be a great catalyst into helping sort of more traditional companies and more traditional science to actually reach hundreds of millions of consumers globally. So you have to understand also that there is a fundamental understanding of Ayurveda in India. There's a fundamental understanding of Ayurveda deep rooted into our culture. But as we leave India, and as we leave South Asia, because there are a few other countries in South Asia which have some sort of connection to Ayurveda, that doesn't exist. And so it's our job to explain it in a format that appeals to consumers as well.
I think very well said, Arjun. And I think that is where the investment need also is a little more felt in terms of educating, because I think it's almost like starting a new category abroad, not in India, of educating people, of educating the consumer, and then in creating acceptance with a lot of the competition, which is big pharma, and getting clearances for medicines in terms of cure from the government. So I think that piece would need a lot of investment, because the rest I think is here in India. At this point, I want to bring in Khushboo. Khushboo has been, I mean, I've known her for a long time, and she was at the Spa Association of India a very long time back. That's where she started her journey, and then she went into wellness, and now she's into wellness content and recordings. She's very soon going to launch her own content channels also online, and she's tied up with some OTT, really big OTT names. And that's where I think, and that's the reason I invited her here, because this is the kind of visibility we need globally. Unless and until we go out and tell people what Ayurveda is, the perceptions are not going to change. So education will be key. Kushbu, why don't you reflect on the global piece from your experience? You'll have to unmute. You're on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Hi, warm welcome to everybody on the panel and to you, Deepak. So, as you know, he correctly said about the repackaging and rebranding of Ayurveda. I saw this gap long time back. I have had I initiated a similar venture in this space. It was an e-commerce called as madaboutwellness.com, which was all that I saw was that so many spas, wellness retreat, Ayurveda hospitals, and these destination spas and the mobile spas, whatnot, the day spas, they had so much services, beautiful therapies, curative, preventive, so much to offer. But they just did not know how to sell themselves. I will just come to global on this. This is what I saw in India. When it is not existing in India, at global, we are zero on this when it comes to Ayurveda. So then, I really studied, and I think we brought the content revolution in the entire wellness industry of India. We changed their brochures, websites, the entire e-commerce, how to sell every single therapy, every single program, the benefit it offers, the usage it has. And like this, people would get to know, okay, even if I'm going for a simple deep tissue, what can it do to my body, and why should I book for it? So that's how we have really done a very good work in revolutionizing the industry through content. So, and that was through the platform, the vehicle of e-commerce, which is digital, which is media, and that is the marketing. So the similar thing when I come globally, when it was not existing in India, and today also it's not much there. It's not much in India. Globally, we are almost zero on this. So when we talk about where investors should spend, technology-led startup is the key area where an investor has to spend, so that we can bridge the gap between the click model, where you click, and the brick model, which is the physical Ayurveda centers existing. And this entire technology led industry, the startup, it is a huge buoyant space for the investors right now. And also, not just this, during the COVID crisis, we have seen how WHO, obviously they don't recognize Ayurveda, allopathy is there. So there is a huge need requirement for awareness of a 5,000-year-old medicine system, how it is curative, preventive, and how it can heal you to the root cause. So that entire investment in creating awareness about the Ayurveda medicine system, bringing people closer to it, and then investing on technologies that bridges the gap between the physical centers and the customer. This is the main area where investors really should put in. Yes, Deepak.
Deepak, you seem to be on mute, I believe.
Mute.
Sorry. I hope I'm audible. I would want to bring in Ridhima here, and yeah, she's currently the poster girl on Shark Tank, something that we've all seen quite a bit for many years. And congratulations first from all of us.
Thank you.
And I think well done for making Ayurveda proud on Shark Tank.
Thank you.
So I believe these are the things that will actually bring Ayurveda in the limelight. And since I come from the BPO industry, we've run call centers for almost 2 decades. We are very big on research and analytics and dealing with a lot of data. We did a little research after I invited Ridhima to speak on this panel. And the awareness has grown by almost 38% on Ayurveda among startups. That's a very healthy, though we did not have much time to research. We did a very small sample size, but the initial results are very encouraging. So Ridhima, I believe that you also started looking at the exports market, and
yes, very recently.
so how would you want to share your journey in India and then looking globally in context of taking Ayurveda global?
Yeah. So a quick background to why we do Ayurveda again comes from a very similar background that Arjun was mentioning. My grandfather actually had one of those largest businesses in Jammu and Kashmir where it came to Ayurvedic herbs, and he was a practicing Ayurvedic doctor, but it was very restricted to Jammu and Kashmir. Then the further generation never ended up getting into Ayurveda as such. But back in 2019 is when I felt that we knew about herbs that a lot of people didn't really understand. A lot of people needed them, but they were just getting packaged in churans and powders, which are probably very hard to understand from a regular consumer standpoint. And I felt that this was a space that I really wanted to get in, considering that I had very keen interest in health too. I come from a brand management, background. I've had my experience in it. So we had the sourcing, which was strong. We had that knowledge. I came from that background where we could sort of, convert it into a B2C brand. So that was the reason why we started. Although it's been almost 2.5 years that we've been in the business, we've sort of understood, who's purchasing the brand, what kind of customer caricature is it, because we are small and still in touch with the ground level, and we understand the customer far better than bigger FMCGs. And it seems that people, especially in India, have a lot of understanding of what it takes, especially in villages, probably tier 3 and suburb areas. There's a lot more information that they have when it comes to Ayurvedic herbs, but potentially where the market is sitting, which is your tier 1 metros, there's hardly information about it right now. As we speak, the customer is basically somebody whose grandfather or grandmom used to use Ayurveda at some point of time, but they lost the touch with Ayurveda, probably the nuskas that their grandfathers and grandmothers would give them. And now they are in a very conventional system where they're sleeping at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and they need to get back to their routines. They need to get back to health. And they're probably, figuring out where and how can they do that. And we sort of came into picture in a way where we said that we don't want to do anything conventional. We don't want to give it a name which is not recognized by most people. Or we wanted to sort of package everything in a way where it integrates with the consumer in a way that it blends with their lifestyle. So we introduce tea blends, we introduce lattes, coffee substitutes, breakfast cereals, just so that consumer can use it and still be able to understand that this is how I want to use it. So let's say if I want to do something for a fatty liver, which is like typically a blend of a couple of complex Ayurvedic herbs, but I would rather say liver cleanse tea because I want to, complete it in a solution and say that, okay, if you think there is indigestion, if you think you have a fatty liver, if you think you have liver cirrhosis, you better have this. So I think we tried doing that. And of course, in India, because there is a back history of, that some affinity with Ayurveda, it sort of works out. But again, I feel it's a huge category creation job because, people who understand Ayurveda well will understand that selling a curcumin capsule, which does not assimilate in the body without any fat, is actually not good for your body. But they're still selling like hotcakes. So I think there's a lot of category creation job here, which of course the content will supplement. But for the little bit of business that we've done beyond India, especially in US and UAE, what we've understood is that people want to try something new. And Ayurveda definitely has the potential to be the next big yoga, that trend. But I think, yes, the certifications is a huge job. The category creation, especially for people who do not come from the ethnicity that we come from, there, I think it's first establishing the trust with all the certifications that you do, then creating adjacent content and consultations, and then reaching out to the customer. So it's a long process there, which I think we probably skip because we come from India and Indians usually know what it is. But I think from an investment point of view, I would say there's a lot of investment needed in getting the required certifications and creating that kind of category awareness with content and other things.
So thank you. Anurag, I'd like to come to you. I think this is established by now that, Indians will adopt it much faster than any other ethnicity or any other country. There has to be a new category creation. People from experience have spoken. And any category that has to be created, of course, needs more resources in terms of monetary resources, in terms of inputs to educate. How would you, being in the investment business, reflect on these issues?
Thanks, Deepak. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Great. So, Deepak, I think the eminent panelists have spoken from the industry side, which is much more valuable as a domain expert. The opportunity is not limited to India. What I see is over the last 3 years, if most of the audience today, I think they would relate to the kind of names that I would take here. Ozaiva, and Kapiva, Wellbeing Nutrition, Kama Ayurveda. I think these are all Jiva Ayurveda. I think these are names that have come forward and have surprised us how Ayurveda is showing sort of great results, not only as a performance for the customer, but as businesses also. It's signified, in the form that, how these companies have been able to raise money as well. Of course, I don't say that, when companies raise money, it's a success story. Success story is when they provide exits and growth to their shareholders. But what I do see is that it's a good sign that a lot of these companies have raised, till Series B of investment and even gone further. On the overall context, if you see, what is the best and the most encouraging part of the sector is this sector is not only promoted by the domain experts, but India being branded as the yoga country. That gives us a very strong leeway to position ourselves globally. I mean, the fact that there's a ministry of Ayush established, which is backing the kind of authenticity of the value that this ecosystem brings forward, endorsed by the government. I think that itself gives a lot of assurance to not only Indian ecosystem as the customer, but globally the customer base as well as global investors who are not probably that aware of the value that this ecosystem can bring as a new economy, right? So from that perspective, I do feel that, of course, when we evaluate companies from investment perspective, we accelerate companies, we help them collaborate with big enterprises, right? Doing all of this, there are many factors that we see. One of the major factors being scalability. And scalability comes from adaptation. Adaptation comes from awareness, right? And awareness would require funds. So what is important to understand for any investor or for any founder in this space as well is to understand how soon one can create an awareness about that particular product while the overall country is being branded from a Ayurveda perspective anyway. So the brand recognition comes from there. But the value of one product and its impact on their customers, I think that if the founders are able to convey well to their target market, whether it's inside India, outside India, I think that will be a key of how it can help in reduction of the gestation period for that business. Because the faster the cycle of awareness creation to adaptation to results and to testimonials and success stories, I think the sooner we get the results, I think we'll be much more at a stage where we will be able to.
You made it sound very simple, you very quick from start to finish and adoption, it's very encouraging to hear, of course. But again, coming back to the difficult part, what do you think as an investor? Will it take just a little resource, or will it take more than that little resource to create this new category and this awareness?
No, I think, I mean, the numbers say it, the data says is that, brands need this kind of money. So Ayurveda is somewhere a cross section of D2C, right? And these D2C brands, I think there's a lot of capital infusion required initially for these steps that I mentioned. And having said that, of course, these steps are very good to hear, very good buzzwords, simple words, and simple chain of steps. But each step has at least 200 further sub steps, and it's not easy.
I will not name the country, but why I choose this topic. We have tremendous support from the Ministry of Ayush. Of course, we would have gotten it anyways. I mean, we've done a lot of the right things. We have a lot of global organization names with us. We have the best names in Ayurveda globally with us. Very grateful for that. And that was the reason Ministry of Ayush, it was easy for the Ministry of Ayush right to the top to come and engage with us and kind of support what we are doing.
Right.
The projections that we've given them are very compelling for the country itself. Besides promoting the heritage and saving that heritage, which might within a generation, if not utilized properly, I think this knowledge will be possibly in some old manuscripts that we'll be trying to save in some kind of a museum. So the government understands that, thankfully. So the Indian government part is clear, but the big issue is, as I started by saying that without naming the countries, somebody fairly senior in their international trade department in one of the trade ministries said, "What will happen if you do not use Ayurveda?" Now to all the panelists, that is what we are up against. That is where the education is needed. And if you have to educate the various countries and their people, we've got to start from scratch. At this point, I'm going to come to Vivek. So Vivek has been helping. I don't know. It's going to be a huge number. The number of startups he's helped raise capital for, and he engages with all kinds of startups day in and day out. At a very personal note, I do not know how he does it, and being a lazy one, I don't know why he does it. But I'm sure he is smiling and going to Calcutta. There must be a lot of money involved, my friend. So Vivek, your views on the subject and the topic. And before that, kindly unmute yourself. I see a mute. Ji. So Vivek.
Thank you. You have healthcare Ayurveda entrepreneurs on board. Yeah, you've raised capital. Who've raised capital? So I don't know what more to say. My feeling with this category is that I think, we have a lot of ourselves to blame, right? I think our traditional jugaad attitude has led a lot of us, so, given that people believe in Ayurveda, I think, even large companies can't take names in this thing like this. Uh, you know, but, even these guys, all of them will, we've cut corners, in just taking advantage of the word Ayurveda. I think product inconsistency has been a big issue. My feeling is that, people already now have this consciousness, that natural is healthy, that, a lot of talk around plant-based. So all that I don't think needs too much education. I think what needs education, or probably what needs a bit more hand holding, is to ensure that, I think back-end supply chain people who are doing that are, standardizing that, have come, I think, the scientific community, of course, doubts. I think they call even Ayurveda practitioners, I think, quacks, right? Uh, maybe rightfully, maybe wrongfully so. I'm sure there are some people who understand, but I also probably know that maybe a vast majority actually just use that to the natural, the common knowledge, use that to their advantage, and actually, I think that is what has created this issue. So I think, Ayurveda practitioner stroke, you know I think, and that's where I think startups can play a critical role, right? Because startups inherently try to challenge the status quo, right? So if startups actually get their supply chain right, in my view, in Ayurveda, well, off late a lot of D2C, there's a huge amount of D2C interest which has happened in the market, right? Uh, and health food brands have really raised a huge amount of capital, a lot of interest. Everybody is chatting with them. So my feeling is that, I think, if the back end, if I can trust, I don't know, would you trust a low brand Ayurveda product off the shelf? Right? That's the question. For example, would you go to a local Ayurveda doctor so I'm not talking about, Dr. Vaidya's grandfather, for example, but would you go to a local Ayurveda practitioner? How many of us have seen that funny guy on the road, right? Who's got this tent and is claiming to cure, everything to everything, from cancer
But I think
to everything.
Vivek, allow me to interject here. We are looking more at the global market. We are not looking to sell to India. That will happen. That will
No,
definitely
even
happen.
I think that's your problem in the global market, right? Because we have created that imagery. Now, the global market, in fact, even 10 times more in the global market, even 10x more in the global market, right?
Hmm.
We work with investors internationally who inherently think that Indian startups might have corporate governance issues, for example, and not wrongfully so. So similarly, today, to sell to an international audience, you need to create that belief that you're not cheating on the product. And I think that in my mind is the biggest problem to solve in this case. uh, that how do we, one is stop cheating on the product, and how do we make the ecosystem believe that we are not cheating on the product.
I think that is where I would want to bring in Arjun. And because he's been a products person, he's sold, he's gone through the entire rigmarole of challenges that you just, how would I say, uncovered. So, Arjun, how do you reflect on what Vivek is just
But Deepak, specifically, what part of what Vivek said about creating products? What did you want me to talk about?
No, he said that there's a credibility issue, that, we cut corners, there's a supply chain issue, and then, the corporate governance of Indian startups is suspect in the eyes of the larger foreign investors and the foreign clientele also. So there's a trust issue.
Look, I think inherently there is some amount of trust issue in some countries, right? What does this come from? Maybe it's come from previous bad actors who have not acted in the right way. Maybe it's come from just general thought process of how we are as startups. Having said that, I think a few rotten apples don't spoil the entire industry, right? So I think the way to approach this would be accept that maybe there is there is a trust issue, there is a credibility issue, right? But for the last 5 or 6 years, what I have seen is the steps we've taken forward, we've never taken before in the history of independent India. So where there is a trust issue, or where we are facing a gap, or where we are facing some amount of pushback to get our products listed, our startups listed, etc., all of that, I think in this specific realm, if we really want to make Ayurveda global, it's multiple stakeholders coming together, right? So it's the government with companies, with research institutions who help build the credibility at a global scale, and end customers. As Indians who are fundamentally believers in Ayurveda, even as end customers, it's our job to propagate the message as we can. If we have government, private companies, researchers and institutions, and end customers talking about Ayurveda and moving us in the right direction, think about 500 million people, 200, 300 million people supporting a movement. Nothing can stop us, right? But the concerted effort of everyone coming through and working together, that's what we need to make this genuinely global. That's what will give us the compounding effect and the hyperscale. And I think we have some work to do there still.
No, I totally agree with you, because that is what International Ayurveda Alliance, my entire objective is. So we've done our homework in tie-ups with global organizations, with many countries. They are going to welcome our delegations. We've just been held up because of the corona circumstance, but I think that should clear up in the next maybe 2 to 3 months. That is what everybody is expecting and hoping. And there are a few countries where Ayurveda is a little more welcome than a few other countries, and we are going to target the low-hanging fruit first. So we are going to do that. And you very rightly said that, Arjun. I think you very your entire observation overlaps our research of 2 years globally. These are the problems.
I think we're thinking alike, which is a great thing.
So we researched. On my training and background of document discovery and research and global online stuff and call centers, so that these things come naturally to me. I do understand these things, and I'm extremely biased towards researching first and then getting on to anything else. So we have the government, we have a lot of global organizations with us. We have most, not all, but possibly most global associations in Ayurveda are with us. India, of course, we have. And what you just mentioned, Arjun, I would like to share that we are already talking to 3 state governments to set up centers of excellence in Ayurveda.
Wow.
That would be end to end, including research, including clinical trials, including things like artificial intelligence and predictive analysis.
Wow.
So
amazing.
those things I think should reflect very well on the industry, and the industry is extremely excited. From the oldest of players like the Shanaz Hussain group, to all of you today, to the newest of entrants like Ridhima, who changing the entire landscape and telling us how things can be solved. So she is doing what mothers do to the kids. तो वो कहते हैं कि वो कड़वा गुड़ में लपेट के देना. So if we are not going to have medicines, Ridhima is going to make sure that we have tea which is already infused with those medicines. So I think that's a great way of actually starting people on Ayurveda. So yes, I totally agree with you, Arjun. But Khushboo, what has been your experience in wellness globally? What do you think are the big challenges? Because every time we've researched every challenge that was listed in our research, and we tried to find a solution to it, invariably we've seen the need for a lot of capital to go and educate people. That is branding and education. That is exactly the 2 main points that we've come at, because India has the rest. I think the global the supply chain problems and quality problems will vanish, because Vivek, I understand your sentiment, Vivek, but when India exports, since childhood, we've seen that every product has a different quality in exports and a different quality for the Indian consumer. So our exporters do understand the nuances of sending quality outside.
The imagery. No, the imagery has to get created. No, that we are sending consistent quality.
I'm saying that's what I'm saying. The branding.
See, that was our same struggle when we were trying to build a couple of startups in the apparel, in the ethnic wear space, right? Today, if you look at the ethnic wear apparel space, if you look at, well, there's pretty much nobody, right? Very small. There's pretty much nobody has become so large, and we keep talking about India having trillions of karigars, right? Because the challenge is the consistency of we've not been able to consistently deliver the same quality of product in that same design. Maybe a Fab India is one unique example, right? Not many people have done it, but look at the size of the market and look at, even in Ayurveda, though I know of a few brands which have raised capital. Look at the size of the healthcare market. So if X got raised in healthcare, what percentage of it was raised in Ayurveda? Let's forget the industry size. I don't know. I don't have that exact percentage. But let's look at if 100 rupees got raised in healthcare, how much got raised in Ayurveda? Maybe let's discuss that. Or maybe let's say that's the question. No? Then the question is not. Then the question to understand is why is that happening? And
I think I want to take this. I'm sorry. I want to take this to Ridhima. Ridhima, what has been your experience? What are how many people do you think, since you are in the Ayurveda space, how many new entrants do you see entering, especially post the visibility that now that Ayurveda is getting, your own experience, your own success at Shark Tank, and what Vivek said, a lot of companies are getting funded, and Anurag also pointed out a few of them. How do you think that interest is maturing now?
I think, by the name of Ayurveda, I see a lot of new companies that have entered the cosmetology, like the cosmetics segment. I think in terms of, the women hygiene or women products, especially cosmetics, I see a lot of Ayurvedic brands that have entered. Per se, in the segment that we exist, the supplement category is still filling up with a new company every day. But I see far less people doing raw herbs or raw Ayurvedic herbs or blends, and serving them, in the most raw form. Like in Ayurveda, usually you say that the less you process any material, any food material, the better the pranic energy would be. Right. So I see a lot of supplementation happening, which is very understandable because usually it happens through a third party. And there are multiple vendors in the market right now, which probably would package as per your brand needs. But I see less work in the basic premise of what actually Ayurveda was, and how it used to be probably 50, 70 years back.
And what is your experience in the global market, since you mentioned that you started talking to global buyers?
Yeah. It's very interesting to know, to actually understand. Of course, I mean, the experience has been very short. It's still like 15% of the total revenue that we do. It's a very small number. We've just begun and we're just figuring out whether we can do it, whether we can't do it, and all those things. But the but the interest levels are far higher in the Indian migrants who are sitting outside as we speak. So I think they're the most sensitive to what we are doing. And what we also observed is that a lot of people who move outside India do not leave Indian content. So they end up, being in touch with what is happening in the country. And if something interests them, they pick it up as a business opportunity. And, this is usually what is happening. And that's how, like, out of probably 20 leads that we get for distribution, 18 of the cases are like that. So I think it's not really different ethnicities who are right now coming to us asking our products. It's usually Indian people who are probably asking for the product because there is a basic understanding of it. So I think it's, again, we're coming back to the same understanding of it.
Do you think that that is going to have a trickle down effect from the Indians living abroad into the natives of those countries?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is happening. Have you seen any signs of that happening?
Funnily, I was speaking to one of my friends in US, and he was mentioning that there's this brand who's come up with these coconut drinks, and they're earning money like anything, and there's no Indian origin there. They just picked up an idea from somewhere. So I think it's going to be more a function of who's going to pick up the idea and make it that big. But in its own small capacity, it's usually right now the Indians who are coming. But I think ultimately who understands, we just need one person who understands it correctly and knows how to pick up the market opportunity. I'm sure, you know, how yoga became that big because somebody in US understood that, you know, it needs to sort of go to that scale. I think the same is going to happen with Ayurveda too.
That's what we plan to do. Khushboo, how do you think, you know, your experience from much earlier from the SPY Association and your global linkages, how do you see things happening abroad? You know, what are the challenges that you think Indian companies are going to face?
So yeah, I mean, from my experience from Spa Association, then with the e-commerce of madaboutwellness.com, and currently where we work in the content space, where we are creating content for the wellness industry, and we are also in the process of launching our channel where I can't see you, Deepak. Am I audible?
Yes, go on, please go on. I'm right here.
Okay. So, and now as we are working in the content space where we are about to, you know, launch our wellness channel of Mad About Wellness, where we will be showcasing Ayurveda, Indian therapies, Indian Ayurveda products globally across the world. So whether Arjun said it, whether Ridhima, whether Vivek ji, you know, we are all on the same page that the entire gamut of gap is actually on the awareness. When there is enough awareness and enough awareness about Ayurveda and its usage and how genuine and good it is for a layman, for a foreigner who's abroad, who doesn't know, you know, about this industry, who's secluded in a corner. I'll give a very good example of this. That awareness only, you know, will help them accept Ayurveda. And once they accept Ayurveda, they will accept the services and products that emerge from Ayurveda. So investors, half of the job will be done when he's infusing his capital, putting, you know, his money in the Ayurveda industry, whether it is a technology-led startup or whether it is a product, it is a service. That half of the job battle is won when that awareness makes people come into an acceptance mode. Then you come in a you know mode where you have to buy or you know buy the product or the service. So that is the main gap. In 2017 I was in London and we were a group of friends chilling and holidaying, and I had actually I was invited for a Ayurveda roadshow. Couple of Indian retreats and all, they're together pulled in a roadshow where they attract people, educate them about what Ayurveda, their retreats, etc. are offering, like that. So, a group of my friends who are Indian origin, but who are staying in London, working there, earning very good money, they were all laughing at Ayurveda, what Ayurveda done, and COVID had not come at that time, and they were just laughing at that. Okay, if you need, if you need supplements, you have all these supplements, nutraceutical, you have all this. If you need to get treated, you have these doctors, you have this therapy. What will your Ayurveda? So they were mocking upon Ayurveda, and I was surprised to see that when these Indian origins don't have acceptance, they just keep hearing about Ayurveda, India, Ayurveda, yoga. But when they are mocking upon, think about the people who are not from India, who are not from our land. So how will they have that acceptance about our most strong, the heritage of our country? So that I'll again repeat that creating awareness, making people accept, that is a very, very huge gap. And secondly, as I mentioned, I will always accentuate upon the startups, the digital space, the technology. Like in 2018, I checked the figures, about 160 million US dollars were attracted by health tech industry. So that means there is that space investment going on, and this has to increase abroad. And once it is increased in the technology, then the gap between the service providers and the end consumer can be really reduced. So
At that point, Khushboo, I would want to bring in Anurag and get a perspective from an investor. Anurag, listening to all that we've listened to and whatever we've already, pre this panel discussion, seen around us, as an investor, if you had to just, kind of off the hook, just as a on the go thought, uh, look at investments, what do you think in Ayurveda would you find investable from a very generic perspective?
So there are two components to it, Deepak, and thanks for putting across that question. The first one being the market scenario and the credibility, which Vivek rightly mentioned that now that adds to the risk value of the investment, right? Now, so the risk has to be assessed from the outward side of things, but intrinsically we have to see the strength of each business, where they are able to reach. For example, some parameters that may include, and if I do a simple SWOT analysis for each business, right, as an investor,
Yeah.
not to be submitted by the founder, but we do that research to understand a business's strengths, their weakness, the opportunity in the market vis-a-vis the threats like the risk that Vivek also rightly mentioned. Then we can do a complete holistic analysis and then take our call. For example, the kind of parameters that I would look at is the repeat customer base, the impact, the testimonials. Because see, when it comes to Ayurveda, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are experts like Ridhima and I think Arjun is not here now, but these are experts who have already done it, and they are building some valuable value propositions in this industry. The parameters that I would rather look at from their perspective is how are they growing and scaling their business, how well they are executing. Like Ridhima rightly said, we need to find that one person who can ace the market and has a complete understanding of it and has the right value proposition that the customer can't refuse, right? Now, when we talk about these categories, correct me if I'm wrong, um, Ayurveda itself takes care when it comes to beauty, well-being, pain management, health, and wellness as a whole as an industry is gaining more momentum, not across India but globally, right? And with platforms like social media, platforms like Insta, I think this has become much more easy to reach out to the consumers. I'm just stating one example. There are several as of date. So having the right go-to market and being able to capture the results and how to optimize that data to be able to sort of create more value to the consumers. For example, if you have a category that is showing more promising results, so as an entrepreneur, smart entrepreneur would start selling that more while he's creating a brand awareness or a category awareness for the other products that are selling less, right? And manufacture that more. So those permutation combinations, I think it's the value in the execution. But of course, a good SWOT will help us do a reasonable analysis around each business.
So,
Market
but
risk will
Anurag,
always be there.
whatever we know of the Ayurveda industry today in India, if we were to take it global, what would be your, one or two or three favorite guesses in terms of products or services that we could take global? What do you think qualifies there to, which possibly might have a larger chance of succeeding globally?
So I'll give you an example from my portfolio. We and I'm sorry, this is not directly relevant, but it's an analogy I'm trying to build.
Yeah.
We have a brand known as Satviko, which is also called Yoga Food. Right now, this company, I mean, we invested long back, but today, as we know, I think makhana as a food category, it's a wellness food as a superfood, right?
it's a super
90% of 90% of global production of makhanas happen from India. That said, we have a USP, right? So the kind of growth that I'm seeing there, not only as a company but as a category, there are many more players as well now, right?
Are you
So
also exporting that, if I may ask? Is Satviko,
absolutely, absolutely. In
and is
fact, a
it as
good
a is it as a snack or is it as a health food?
uh, that I can check with the founder how they're positioning it.
That is what I'm fighting today. I mean,
Yeah.
my entire initiative, it's very easy. The industry is coming together. Investors like you, Vivek, in the investment fraternity is coming together. Old players like the oldest players are coming together with me, but the challenge is perception outside India. That is where we
Yeah.
But
have
it's
to.
positioned as a snack.
Yeah, I think it's positioned as a snack.
Yep.
Vivek, I want to come to you from the investment perspective. If you had to look at a couple of products or services or categories within Ayurveda that you think might be investable enough to go abroad, in the global market, what would you look at?
No, food, yeah, I mean, food. In my mind, see, I think more than the medicinal angle, I think the food angle, right? Of I was recently reading somewhere. I in fact was talking with a startup which is basically building a range of products, which is Ayurveda plant mix match, where they are saying is actually antidepressant. It is non antidepressant. It is like an antidepressant, right? Now, if estimated 10% of the US population is depressed, right? If you have food which says that that it is antidepressant, imagine a market for something like that, right? The question is, of course, can we build a scientific basis on that, and can we consistently deliver that? So in my mind, food categories are big, right? Look at the boom in D2C which is happening in India, right? Nothing prevents you from sending that food outside. Yeah, what prevents you from selling that food outside, right?
Yeah, I think it's FDA only. It is non-medicinal, so I
Yeah,
think
so
it's
it is.
easy.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it's easy. So it's a question of you getting our story, our branding story right, and talking about I hear, I don't know whether the number is right or wrong, but I hear that almost 1/6 or 1/7 of the entire US population is a claimed yoga practitioner. I'm sure it's uh, probably overestimated. But there's a huge, I mean, that's even if that is overestimated to a very, very large extent, right? But it took them to they did it themselves, right? It's not Indians who exported it there. Some Indians exported themselves there and built it, but it was not like so. To that extent, I think we will also lose this part of the story if we don't very quickly figure out food categories, which are medicinal, if I may use that word, or curative, or healthy, and see if we can expand them internationally. I think that's a huge
So
opportunity.
you're looking at the food category, which is in a sense, say, based on Ayurveda raw materials that can possibly be the low hanging fruit to
to
migrate
start
our.
off with to start off with because I think medicinal application is probably step two. uh, the core medicinal or the curative
Yeah,
application,
that'll come on later, and we are very clear.
probably that is step two. But I think if we can get our if we can get our food angle
And so, but
right.
Ridhima, what has been your experience, Ridhima, when you're trying to export these products? Is there of course, when you actually say that your products have some kind of medicinal properties, how do people look at it? What are the compliances? What is the compliances angle in other countries?
So, it's a little longer story. So when we wanted to do it in 2020, because we started right between the pandemic. And because I had a few contacts and I also wanted to explore how it functions outside India, I immediately started exports just so that, I had a little understanding of how it functions. So primarily what we have to do is that the claims that we make here outrightly, saying that it's going to help you probably regenerate your liver, things like that, that we usually abstain from writing in the export packaging. So from a medicinal point of view, see, all our products are over the counter. These are like very basic stuff like ashwagandha,
Departmental store
brahmi
products. Yeah, I
blend
know.
in the tea, right? For most of the products, right? Now, if somebody doesn't know paneer dodi, they might think that there's a clinical angle to it, but ultimately it functions like ashwagandha. People were using it on a day-to-day basis. So all these products are over the counter, but yes, when it comes to international exports, we usually have to abstain ourselves from writing claims. That's one.
What is your branding? What is your branding pitch there? I mean, you can't claim the biggest asset in terms of what the product is, and yet you have to say it. So how do you do that?
So we usually take a lot of plunge on the ingredients and the benefits of the ingredients, which are universally established. There are already papers and data which supports it, and we say that it's a blend in the tea, right? So we usually take that route, which is to say that this ingredient has this advantage, that ingredient. So, but yes, the tea ultimately gets packaged as liver cleanse or good for diabetes, something like that. But we don't usually make claims. That's what we do currently. But the ultimate intent is to, yes, get verified by FDA, which is again a long process.
Okay. So, Khushboo, what happens when a lot of these spas abroad, just put in their spa menu and portfolios, they say this is Ayurveda spa. How genuine are those things? Because our experience has been a little disturbing.
Okay, what has been your experience? So I'll add up to it.
These countries, a lot of these spas, have no training or knowledge of actual Ayurveda, and they will simply brand anything as an Ayurvedic massage and just sell it among others. We have a Swedish massage, we have a this massage, we have a that massage, and we have an Ayurvedic massage.
So this is like any gully spa that can happen in India also. A similar gully spa can happen in Netherlands to Germany, any country, where just to
in India. Way more happens in India. I agree with it.
India. So okay, since we're talking about Ayurveda globally, I can definitely have an hour-long conversation on how these gully spas have really rotted and defamed the actual wellness industry. So that's another topic. But yes, abroad, when we talk about, I was in Tbilisi in Russia, where I was invited to experience an Ayurveda spa. But fortunately, I had a mixed experience there, because when I was going through the spa market, wellness market there, and I'll give a one Germany example also, I'll add to it. But there they had invited, basically these people want Ayurvedic doctors, and they train the therapist on how to give Ayurveda therapies, and they give. But that authenticity which we get in India cannot come. The reason being that authentic, even it cannot come even in North India, when clients come to us for their treatment via alternative therapy, Ayurveda. They have a chronic disease problem, maybe an arthritis or a neuro issue, or even a post cancer rehab. We always recommend and send them to South India. What you get in South India, the authentic herbs, the authentic oils, the authentic people who have really studied Ayurveda, like in Ayurveda hospitals, and then they give treatment. That cannot happen abroad. It cannot happen abroad. Even in North India, you will not get that quality. So getting that quality abroad is a real challenge. So this authenticity cannot come, and that is why the quality check. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So that is why that infusing that quality, brand awareness I always mentioned, infusing that quality is very important. And that quality can always be infused when you have an investor infusing their capital, because there the Ayurveda practitioners are really expensive. The salaries in India are much low, but when they go abroad, it's really expensive. So people, avoid getting very good quality, practitioners to run their outlets or to run their, medical Ayurveda spas.
So Khushboo, come on that point. I would wish to ask Anurag a final. I'm just trying to wind up here now. Just a final question round. Anurag first. Anurag, do you think that the time for Ayurveda, as an industry, as an independent industry vertical, has arrived in India?
I strictly believe so, because it's not only from the consumption pattern, but also I think how wellness as a category has opened up. India, for a lot of reasons, is known as a wellness destination. And having said that, I think the India as a brand, yoga as a brand, are drivers of this kind of positioning for the country. So that will always help. And as a category, I do feel that it's emerging, and I really hope that the concern that Vivek said, which is absolutely genuine today, would be sort of mitigated, because in real terms, results will speak for itself as the brand of India goes ahead and magnifies Ayurveda per se.
Perfect. So Vivek, the same question to you. You think has Ayurveda as an independent category in Indian startups maybe or Indian business arrived in perspective with going global?
Yeah. Big time, yeah, or somebody else will take the space away, in my view. Just like, somebody else took the yoga space away, and it's a matter of time. I think it's high time. I think the timing is, go fast.
Correct. So, well, that's very nice to hear for our initiative. I mean, it is. I feel elated. We started our initiative at the right time. Ridhima, what are you observing? With I'm sure a lot of the media, a lot of different kinds of attention is coming to your initiative in your company. What is your feel? Have we arrived? Has the time for Ayurveda going global arrived?
Honestly, before starting this, I had a full-fledged nice job, nice paying job. I think if I've put all my eggs in the basket, it's just because I feel very strongly that there is a huge market for it. So yeah.
And what are the geographies that you think you wish to pursue, since you have so much of experience and you've done your research and more importantly, you put your money there?
Yeah,
What
so
are
I
the
think India, needless to say. I mean, I think it's a
talking global,
no-brainer.
beyond India, beyond India.
So I think for whatever little work we've done outside, I think there is a huge understanding, or let's say demand of it in UAE and US is what I've seen, and Canada and Australia also function in the similar way. We are yet to explore a lot more of UK, so I'm not really commenting on that. But yes, I think for starters, I would preferably pick up US and UAE.
Khushboo, coming to you, where should young Indian startups and Indian companies, who are innovative, who have all the right set of credentials, be looking at? What countries do you think, maybe three or four countries that you, from your experience, would kind of direct them to, go there and you'll be successful globally?
Germany, any day, Germany. Then after Germany, it's Europe. Thirdly, I'm talking in reference to, in the Indian wellness industry, these are the countries from where the maximum people come for their treatments, rehabs, even for medical tourism. So considering the data that I have seen, after accumulating, that is what I'll share. So after Europe, it is Middle East. In priority, like hierarchy, these three are the major segments. Then comes USA. That is what I've seen.
US is a retail and consumption market. I think a pure Ayurveda market. I totally agree with you. Europe and Middle East. That has been our research experience also.
I'll give you, I'll give you just one small example. I don't remember the name of this. It's a spa brand. It's a spa brand, but they have an Ayurvedic, therapy. They just give Abhyangam and Shirodhara and a Swedish massage. They give only 3 therapies. And this brand has some 882 outlets in USA, spread across the entire USA. And one foreigner and one Indian origin, together started this business. And they are doing probably better than any hospitality chain in terms of their turnover revenue, because money infused is very little, and obviously the number of clients coming in for the treatments is much higher. So the amount of money they are raking in. So USA, it's not that it is a light market. It's again about creating the credibility in the mindset, changing the mindset, adding to that credibility, and then infusing capital in, artificial intelligence, then your machine learning, data analytics, and augmented reality. That is the space where, as Anurag rightly talked about, when they do SWOT analysis, they see the customer reputation. So that's how they gauge their customer reputation. And that is why this, adoption and deployment of the new age technology becomes very important to bridge the gap and make people accept Ayurveda and become, the loyal customers.
So thank you, everybody. I think we've had a very engaging discussion and a lot of points from various experiences discussed. Very, very relevant points, some real experiences, not theoretical, not empirical. And I think that would form the meat of the benefit for anybody who will possibly see our recordings, or we're going to share these across the globe. And yeah, I think I want to sum up everybody's sentiment in 2 or 3 things. That yes, the time for Indian Ayurveda going global is arrived. If we do not pick it up now, we will miss one of the biggest opportunities for Indian Ayurveda as a subject of culture and heritage
This is
as
the
well.
best time post COVID. This is the best time. People have that, acceptance.
And of course, the branding and creating product credibility. Product credibility, I think, is a very generic thing for any business or any startup. Everybody has to do that. But I think the branding part is and convincing people that what is Ayurveda, and that kind of acceptance has to be created. So at that note, I thank Khushboo, Vivek, Ridhima, Anurag, and Arjun. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your.
Thank you, Deepak, for bringing all of us together.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Everybody, bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.